Every week, a lot happens in Parliament. Debates rage, bills are discussed, and laws are introduced. So it's easy to feel like you don't quite know what's going on in the chamber. So we're lifting the lid and telling you exactly what happened this week in Parliament. This week, we saw criticism from Labour about the lack of a publication about ministerial interests and an urgent question about a ceasefire in Israel and Gaza. In the first story today, we're going to take a look at an urgent question from Angela Rayner to Paymaster General Penny Mordaunt. An urgent question is exactly what it sounds like. It's a question that an MP believes deserves an answer from the government swiftly. Applications for urgent questions are submitted to the Speaker, who considers whether the relevant government minister should be dragged down to the chamber to explain themselves. Well, on Tuesday, the Speaker granted a question about why a register for ministers' interests has not yet been published. This document is usually published twice a year and includes a list provided by each member of relevant interests known to them who might be thought to give rise to a conflict. The last time this document was published was in July 2020, and as part of this, Boris Johnson was shown to be the patron of a number of charities, as well as receiving book royalties and property payments, while other ministers declared their family members with notable jobs, including Michael Gove's wife, who's a Daily Mail journalist. In addition to asking why, despite this report usually being published twice a year, it's not been published since July of 2020, Angela Rayner questioned whether the government represents the people or big business, and whether the rules apply to the Prime Minister too, following claims that his secretive holiday to Mystique may have cost twice the amount that was actually declared.
Order. I now call Angela Rayner to ask the urgent question. Angela Rayner.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Minister for the Cabinet Office make a statement on the enforcement of the Ministerial Code and the publication of the Register of Ministers' Interests? The Ministerial Code is clear. There must be no misuse of taxpayers' money, nor actual or perceived conflicts of interest. But time and again, ministers act like the rules are for other people, none more so than the Prime Minister himself. Last year, he declared £15,000 from a Tory donor for his sleazy jet trip to a private island. This weekend, Mr Speaker, we read that the real cost was double that and paid by someone else entirely.
Penny Mordaunt, who was standing in for the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, replied to most of these points, although some, such as the publication of the Register of Ministers' Interests, she could not reply to, as it was not down to the government to publish this.
The charge she makes is that the people she names are somehow on the take. That's the charge she's making here today on the floor of the House. That they have been focused not over the last 16 months on working their socks off to save lives, to get a vaccination programme up and running, to do the things that the public need us to do. But they have unbelievably entered into politics, made sacrifices, overcome the obstacles that she will be aware of to get into this place, not to serve in public life, but to do a mate, or more accurately a Tory mate, or someone that they vaguely know, or met in a lift once, or perhaps don't know at all, a favour. That is the accusation that she is making today. And I'm afraid this is why the Labour line of attack is not getting traction, well rehearsed though it is. It's not getting traction with the public because it is not plausible. It is based not on fact, but on speculation, innuendo and smear. The Honourable Lady has made particular accusations today about colleagues, and I just want to make a final point, Mr Speaker, because if you were to take every single MP she's made an allegation about this afternoon, and you were to look at all of the political donations they have received since the pandemic started, since January 2020, if you were to add them all up, if you were to double them, no, Mr Speaker, if you were to quadruple them, you would still just about match what the Honourable Lady herself has received in the same time period. And she should thank her lucky stars that we don't play the same games that she does.
But what do you think? Is Angela Rayner right? And have the government been deliberately delaying the report from being published? And have there been shady business dealings? Or is Penny Mordaunt right? And have the government been honest about their relationship with businesses? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. In the second story this week, we take a look at another urgent question. This time though, it was aimed at James Cleverly, the Minister of State for the Middle East and North Africa. Labour MP Wayne David asked him to make a statement on the UK's effort to secure a ceasefire in Israel and Gaza. Cleverly started off by calling for a de-escalation on both sides.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I will set out to the House the work that the government is doing, along with others, to bring about a peaceful resolution. We are urging the parties to work with mediators towards an immediate ceasefire to prevent further loss of life and a worsening humanitarian situation. We are supporting the United Nations, Egyptian and Qatari efforts to that end, and we work closely with the United States. We're also prioritising our own diplomatic efforts through both bilateral and multilateral channels. The Foreign Secretary and I, with the support of our diplomats on the ground, have been working to progress the conditions needed for an immediate ceasefire. The Foreign Secretary has spoken in recent days with the Israeli Foreign Minister and the Palestinian Prime Minister, where he reinforced our clear message of de-escalation and our desire to work together to end the violence. I delivered similar messages to the Israeli ambassador and the Palestinian head of mission in London. We've also engaged regional partners at ministerial level. The Foreign Secretary spoke with the Foreign Minister of Jordan on the 17th of May, and I spoke just this morning with a number of ambassadors from Arab states to reiterate the need for immediate ceasefire and underlined our shared goals of a peaceful two-state solution.
He went on, though, to condemn Hamas and urge Israel to respect the principles of proportionality and necessity.
The UK unequivocally condemns the firing of rockets at Jerusalem and other locations within Israel. We strongly condemn these acts of terrorism by Hamas and other terrorist groups who must permanently end their incitement and rocket fire against Israel. There is no justification for the targeting of civilians. Israel has a legitimate right to self-defence and to defend its citizens from attack. In doing so, it is vital that all actions are proportionate, in line with international humanitarian law, and make every effort to avoid civilian casualties. We are aware of medical institutions, a number of schools and many homes in Gaza that have been destroyed or seriously damaged, and we are concerned that buildings housing media and humanitarian organisations such as the Qatar Red Crescent have been destroyed. We call on Israel to adhere to the principles of necessity and proportionality when defending its legitimate security interests. We are also concerned by reports that Hamas is once again using civilian infrastructure and populations as a cover for its military operations.
If you find this story particularly hard to follow, then you'll be happy to know that we've made a full explainer, going through how the current Israel-Palestine crisis started, and what action has been taken on both sides. We've linked that video down below. Regardless, do you think that the UK government did enough to aid a ceasefire? And what do you think of Cleverly's statement? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to be updated with what happens in Parliament next week, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link's in the description.